we were asked to, come up with some links of things that we thought were really funny and that we thought worked, and I probably could have spent an entire day just, combing through things and finding things that go back, 30 years and more that are really funny. And then I was told that I had to pick one, so I picked the Dollar Shave Club viral ad for a couple of reasons. I don't think it's the funniest thing that was on my list, but what I do think is that it was really funny, and I think it was really successful, and humor made it successful. But what put it over the top for me is that it actually motivated me to try their product, which of all the other funny things that I saw were things that I either liked before I saw the ad or wasn't motivated to buy.
Terry Tate Office Linebacker, for anyone who hasn't seen that, that's probably my favorite ad of all time for Reebok. It's going back a few years. Anytime, what makes me laugh is anytime you can juxtapose two things that don't belong together. Generally, I think that's where some of the funniest stuff comes from. Just for something more current, I have the Hotels.com Captain Obvious campaign. That's one of those ones when people ask you, is there something out there you wish you did? That's one of them. It's kind of the perfect combination of it's one of those things, as soon as you see the idea, you think, how has nobody done that before? All right, everybody walks around saying, thanks a lot, Captain Obvious, and someone finally actually made a campaign out of that. But they did it perfectly. The writing is phenomenal, and the casting is perfect. That's one of the pitfalls. You can write something great, but you've got to have somebody who can pull it off, and this guy is pretty amazing.
And those were all examples of TV commercials and humor in television, but there's a lot of different mediums, obviously, that advertise. There's a lot of different ways to grab people. And I want to talk about, just in terms of humor, what you guys think, kind of handles humor the best, like what medium best translates for humor. And I'll start with you, Doug, as we just went off your example. I'll hand you this microphone.
I think Value Home Centers is an interesting case because, we're a local company who's been around for 40, 70 years. And you spent a really long time building the brand and building the trust of the community, and so it's difficult. You're always looking at what's the risk reward of commercials, right? So you can use humor in advertising. We've done that with the Value Guy before. We'll actually show an example today, but you're always kind of wandering that fine line when it goes out to a larger medium like television, that you never want to alienate a customer. You never want somebody to watch that commercial and say, it's not the Value Home Centers I know. That's not the company that I'm aware of. But the great thing is that in social media and online and on YouTube, that's really where we can do things completely different. And that's what we've done over the last year is create videos that we use humor in, that we take the Value Guy character. I was telling some folks before, he's really a stand-up comedian at heart who's actually pretty funny. And we can kind of stretch that character out a little bit and do some different things with him. And so in our case, I think social media and the internet is probably the best medium for using humor in.
You mentioned clients, if you're coming from the advertising standpoint, the companies that are advertising that you're creating spots for, and the risks they're willing to take. How do you see that? Like, how big of a risk, if you're pitching something and you have an open slate, you can do whatever you want. If you're coming to a client with a humorous idea, do you see that as being a risk and maybe like damaging your credibility? Or?
I think I would come to a client with a humorous idea if I thought it was relevant to what they were trying to do. I think a lot of people make the mistake of trying to be funny. I've told you from my background is in improv comedy, standing up in front of an audience with nothing to support you and trying to be funny. And one of the rules of that is don't try to make people laugh. Don't try to be funny, because that's where it falls apart. And that's where you see that's where you see jokes. That's where you see like a clear conceit that's trying to be funny and falls flat on its face because there's not much truth or honesty to it. And so I think, is it risky to be funny? Yeah, if it's not supporting what you're trying to do. I don't think that funny is a unique value proposition. I think that it provides value if it supports what the brand is trying to do.
What are some of the pitfalls of trying to be funny, and not just with the client, but also trying to reach an audience?
Yeah, it's exactly what Peter said. Trying to be funny and failing is 100 times worse than not doing it.
I did it tonight, so I know.
Yeah, I know, I saw that. That was good. There's a million little things that go into making it work. You have to have a great idea. You have to write a great script or great words for it. The visuals play a role in it. You have to cast it right. You have to have the right client. So if any of those things looks like it's not going to line up, it's just kind of not worth doing.
Bill, can I piggyback on that?
Yeah, just take the show over, whatever. It's not like I'm moderating.
Thanks, Greg. You put the mic down. Just to piggyback on what you said, that one of the difficulties between live medium, where you have your audience in front of you, and making something, crafting something that's supposed to be funny, is you're standing up in front of people and you can hear laughter, and you're like, this is working, this is funny. But when you're trying to make it in the vacuum of that incubator by which products come from, video products, man, that's tough. So that's risky too, because I find that you can make the people who are who love the brand, who have got some skin in the game, you can make them laugh a lot easier than the general audience.
Just talk about the technique of, I guess, and I'll start with you, Doug, since you had the microphone. The technique of coming up with a funny commercial, ad, or print or radio, whatever.
Sure. I have a group team that works for me. Actually, one of my team members is here tonight. My wife is with me tonight. She's a great test for all of our commercials. But really, what we do is we get the group together and we do edge crafting, right? So we try to go to the craziest extreme that we can, kind of work our way backwards. And I think sometimes, we always remember that your first idea is never going to be your funniest or your best idea, but like, what is the craziest thing we could possibly think of, and then work backwards from that. And there's so much for us is trying to remember the audience that you're speaking to, the medium that you're using, and I think a lot of that plays into how we kind of craft the commercials or whatever we're doing, the print medium or however we're using it. But I think if you start off small and you brainstorm, I think sometimes you miss out on some really great ideas that you would have never thought of if you started smaller. So I think for us, edge crafting and going nuts and then kind of coming back from it, you catch all of those things that you might not have thought of to begin with.
I think if you're talking about being face-to-face with the client and talking about funny ideas...
Either way.
Well, okay, either way. I mean, improv, you call it unfiltered, but I would say it's very structured. It has rules to it. And those rules actually look very similar to what you just heard. I mean, they're all about... coming up with something and then the people around you supporting it. Basically, the antithesis of a creative environment, one that's going to foster humor, is going to be ones where people come up with an idea and then explain what's wrong with it. Which is what a lot of people do, is an idea is put on the table. It's like, well, let me tell you why that won't work. You don't get to humor that way. You say, all right, cool, and let me build on that. Let me find something else to it. In improv, we call it yes and. And I think if you're going to be chasing funny ideas, you've got to follow a process that looks something like that, being open to ideas, and not really shutting down the creative before it has an opportunity to do it. I think some people do have some sort of native talent for being funny, and if you want to talk about what makes something funny, we can talk about that all day long, because I've thought about that for 30 years and I don't know the answer. But to paraphrase a friend of mine, think of all the things that you could possibly say and pick the funny one.
Let's switch channels to social media, which is, there's a pun. Boy, I am dying. Thank you, SKM Group, for your support. Social media has kind of changed the landscape of not only advertising, but certainly humor in advertising, because you can take a joke and take it further onto social media sites and get more exposure. Using humor in marketing and advertising, do you think it's an easier sell, to try and get your product, brand, whatever, to stand out from? And I'll ask Bill this. How has social media affected, the idea of going forward with humor?
Well, it is a little bit of an easier sell because there's really only a couple ways you can do a video that you expect to be viral or shareable. We like the term shareable. It seems less pressure on us.
It's very nice. It's a nice
it is,
term.
right? It's a cop-out is what it is. But yeah, it's either got to be really shocking or really original, or it's got to be funny. And I think clients kind of realize that, and they know that they can still put meat and potatoes in a print ad and kind of get away with it. But I think they're kind of starting to realize that if they expect something to be shared, that it's got to have something interesting about it. Humor's a good way to go. It's just, like we talked about earlier, it's easier said than done.
I want to attack that a little bit. Peter, is there a way do you have to be shocking and over the top in order to be funny, like on social media? Because not everything has to really go viral, does it? Like, you can still have something be interesting and funny and not over the top, and kind of build your brand through that.
I don't think you have to be shocking to be funny, and I mean, there's plenty of things that I'm sure we could sit here and think about that are funny that aren't shocking, and people sharing something. I, like many of my friends, have a Facebook account, and I watch the news feed throughout the day, and I get videos in it and that people are sharing and commenting on and saying, oh, you got to watch this, and putting in a comment which is just tagging their friends, which I find very annoying. But they're sad videos. or they're inspiring videos, or they're boring videos but about some peculiarity of the person. You know, I think one of the things about the social media aspect of it is it really lowers the barriers to putting something in front of somebody and in front of putting it in front of somebody else, which allows its niche value to grow.